On a flight from Singapore to London about 3 years ago, I ordered the chicken. It arrived in a sealed foil container, overcooked, grayish, with a sticky brown sauce that tasted like nothing. The same airline had served me a completely different chicken 2 days earlier on a domestic hop from Heathrow to Edinburgh. Same airline, same class, same seat type. Totally different food. And the reason had nothing to do with the airline itself. In the first video, I explained the general system, how airline food is cooked hours before takeoff, chilled, stored, reheated, and served in an environment where your body can barely taste it. That is the baseline. But international flights add an entirely separate layer. Because on international routes, the airline does not control the food. The caterer does. And the caterer changes at every stop. Here is how it works. When a plane lands in Singapore, the food for the return leg is loaded by a local catering company. Not the same company that loaded the food in London. A different company, with different suppliers, different kitchens, different staff, different regulatory standards. The airline sets a menu and a spec sheet, but the execution is local. Gate Gourmet Singapore is not Gate Gourmet London. They use different ingredient sources, different storage facilities, different cold chain protocols. The menu says chicken with mushroom sauce. What that actually looks and tastes like depends entirely on which kitchen made it, what produce was available that week, and how many hours it sat in a holding facility before boarding. To give you a sense of scale, a major international hub like Dubai processes over 100,000 airline meals a day across multiple caterers. Each caterer handles dozens of airlines, each airline has its own menu spec, and the ingredients are sourced from local markets that shift with season and supply. A meal loaded for a flight to Frankfurt might contain chicken sourced from Brazil, rice from India, and vegetables from the United Arab Emirates, all assembled in a kitchen in Dubai at 2 in the morning. Nobody at the airline headquarters in Germany touched that food, tasted it, or inspected it. They sent a document with a recipe and trusted the system. This is not a secret. It is just how the logistics work. Airlines cannot fly a kitchen around the world. They outsource to whoever is certified at each airport, and the quality gap between caterers can be enormous. A caterer in Tokyo operates under Japanese food safety law, which is among the strictest in the world. Inspections are frequent, records are detailed, temperature logging is continuous. A caterer in a smaller regional airport in Southeast Asia operates under very different conditions. Fewer inspections, less documentation, wider tolerances. Same airline logo on the cart. Completely different food inside. Now here is the part that gets specific. When a flight crosses Chinese airspace, the food safety rules tighten in a way most passengers never notice. China treats food on aircraft as a biosecurity issue. Their Civil Aviation Administration requires that all food served in Chinese airspace meet Chinese sanitary standards, regardless of where it was loaded. In practice, this means catering companies preparing meals for routes through China pre-cook everything to extreme temperatures. Extended thermal processing, usually 90 degrees for a minimum of 10 minutes, even if the food is already cooked. The result is food that is technically safe, but nutritionally stripped. Proteins denature further. Vitamins break down. Texture collapses. A flight attendant who worked Singapore to Beijing routes for over a decade told me the crew learned to recognize the China spec meals by look alone. She called them safe, but dead. That same flight attendant showed me her routine. Before every Asia rotation, she packed her own food. Boiled eggs, rice, almonds, dried fruit. She stored it in a thermal bag in the hotel freezer the night before. On a typical 5-day rotation covering Singapore, Beijing, and back, she would eat her own food for every flight and only eat from the hotel or local restaurants during layovers. She said passengers sometimes asked why crew brought their own meals. She said it was not about being picky. It was about knowing what goes into the food at every stage. When you have watched the loading process at different airports, when you have seen a caterer in one city operate with gloves and temperature logs and another operate without either, you develop preferences. She also mentioned something I found interesting. On routes where the food is loaded from a high-standard caterer, like out of Tokyo or Zurich, crew are more willing to eat the airline meals. They know the source. On routes where the loading happens at airports with a less consistent track record, they default to their own supplies. It is not fear. It is pattern recognition. But it is not just the kitchen. It is the cold chain. On long-haul routes, food may be loaded at the origin, partially consumed on the first leg, stored on board during a transit stop, and then served again on the second leg. The temperature control during ground time is critical. If the aircraft sits on the tarmac for 2 hours in Bangkok at 35 degrees, the onboard galleys are not running. The food sits in carts in ambient temperature. Airlines have protocols for this: time limits, temperature thresholds, discard rules. But enforcement varies by station, by crew, by day. Some stations have ground staff who check cart temperatures with probes before reloading. Others rely on visual inspection and timestamps printed on stickers. A logistics manager at a Middle Eastern carrier told me the biggest variable in international food quality is not the recipe, not the airline, not the class. It is the ground time. How long the food sat, where it sat, and whether anyone checked. He said the difference between a 2-hour turnaround and a 4-hour turnaround in a hot climate can be the difference between a meal that is safe and one that should have been discarded. This is why experienced crew on long routes tend to eat their own food, eat at the stopover hotel, or eat selectively. They choose sealed items, bread rolls, fruit, cheese, bottled water. They skip the hot meals on the second leg of a multi-stop route. Not because of a conspiracy, because they understand the supply chain well enough to know where the weak links are. And here is what this means for you. International airline food is not poison. It is not dangerous in any systemic way. Millions of meals are served safely every day. But the quality, the freshness, and the nutritional value vary wildly depending on where the food was loaded, what standards applied, and how long it sat before reaching your tray. Once you understand that, you stop treating the meal as a given and start making decisions. Eat before a long flight. Bring backup food. Choose sealed items over hot meals on routes with long ground times. And if the crew is eating their own food, consider that a data point. Food and comfort are engineering problems. But safety, that is a different game entirely. And the marks on the wing of your plane, the little stickers and symbols most passengers walk past without a second look, they tell a story. A story about what that aircraft has been through and whether anyone is paying attention. That is next. It is